his potential destinations right now. Every team in the NFL has a quarterback, right? After today, all these teams. Now, you can argue the Panthers do not love Sam Darnold. We'll get into that a little bit later. The Houston Texans, I saw Mayoko tweeting that he kind of waving the white flag like this thing. They like Davis Mills. Davis Mills on a shitty roster showed more than enough to not keep rolling. Now, you could argue he's a third-round pick. You bring Jimmy in. Are you gonna trade for Jimmy to be your backup at 27? It makes no sense.
First of all, Davis Mills is not a normal third-round pick to me. Davis Mills is a first-round talent that was picked in the third round because he had an injury history and had not played a lot of football. But
I'm not
Davis
saying
Mills,
he's Tom Brady, but
I know you're not.
But don't you think they view like we got to fucking steal?
That's my point. Like Davis Mills is first-round skill set and projected first-round pick the year before his last year at Stanford. Daniel Jeremiah said it on this show. David Shaw came on and said it. He's a first-round quarterback. So
what did he tear his ACL in college?
Yeah, he said he had a few injuries. He had a shoulder. I couldn't keep track of everything, but he didn't play.
He got hurt a lot.
He got hurt a lot. And that's why he hadn't played a lot of football. He started he started a very small number of football games. But to me, the Texans are out of the question for Jimmy.
The only thing where they're not out of the question in the sense of like they just have him. They don't, Tyrod's not on their squad anymore or whatever. They don't have backup quarterbacks. Caserio, you have to think, was a huge part. I mean, they spent time around. Caserio was a New England guy.
Yeah.
But it's like, do you want Jimmy is he just going to go there to be the backup? And you're not going to trade making $27 million. That makes no sense. But you could say it's never dumb to have multiple quarterbacks, a high-level guy that knows what you like. I mean, they're trying to set a culture there. But again, he's going to be the backup quarterback. So, it's pretty clear that the New Orleans Saints said for $21 million, guaranteed over 2 years, we'll take this guy back over trading for Jimmy's 1 year at $27 million. One thing we had talked about is the injuries, an underrated deterrent of Jimmy Garoppolo was the fucking number. If you told me that Jimmy's number was what Baker's number is,
18.
Sam Darnold's number is, the 18, the Colts probably have acquired him before
19.
Matt Ryan thing ever comes available, right? Because that's pretty manageable. You could easily do third for Jimmy, whatever.
You think 18. Even with the shoulder? Or
I just think it's easier to justify the number. I think you just keep telling yourself, we're going to trade a third-round pick for this guy, and he can't do anything when we're like, we don't have a quarterback? I would just keep talking myself out. And then you just keep looking at the injury history. You're like, 27 mil? I'm just talking out loud. I don't think he's really that tradable right now, given all the holes filled around the league.
Well, who's left?
Well,
you started going through the list. Think
about Seattle, too. A team in your division knows the other three teams in your division so well because where do you spend watching most of your tape? You play 6 of those games. So the other teams are playing each other. Can you imagine how much, and Pete Carroll's what, a defensive guy, how much 49er offense he's seen over the years? Like Pete Carroll, could he rattle off every player's strengths and weaknesses in the league? Who knows? I bet he'd probably get closer than you'd think. I guarantee he has a legit he could go have a serious conversation about Jimmy Garoppolo, right? What he thinks about Jimmy Garoppolo, strengths, weaknesses, why he wouldn't want him or would want him. Because I do think the Niners, remember Belichick used to trade players to the Bills. Like the Niners would trade him to Seattle at this point, right? You wouldn't be afraid to play him.
You would not be afraid to play him. I think they would trade him there. I don't think they would want him. I don't think they would want him for 2 reasons. The reason you're illustrating, they know him, and reason 2, they got DK. They want to throw the ball down the field.
Drew Lock does have a big arm.
He does. Yeah. Drew Lock has a big arm. So I don't think, clearly, say what you want about Drew Lock. They think there's a chance that he could maybe, possibly, perhaps one day be something. And you already know, he has some of the unknown that sometimes a prospect has. You already know what Jimmy Garoppolo is. And no one wants to spend $25 million for what you already know to not be, the kind of quarterback that you can rely on. Okay, so they're out. Well, that's about it then. It's kind of crazy. And I say this all the time. There are so many teams that need a quarterback, and yet it's always hard to find a spot for a quarterback because they're just a little here, a little there. The money
there's
matters so much.
There's a difference too of like Miami might legitimately need a quarterback pretty soon, but it makes no sense to not just let's see the new coach with Tua. Let's just see it out.
Yeah.
Right. It's some of these teams that might quote unquote, and who knows, the Texans in a year, maybe Davis Mills gets exposed, whatever. But right now, you're just all your chips are in the middle of the table on this kid. Just see if he got something. This guy came from a place where see if he got something worked out several times. They draft Matt Castle in the 7th round. He became something. They draft Jimmy Garoppolo in the 2nd round. One thing you would say about the Patriot guys, they don't believe you have to be a top 5 pick at quarterback to win with you, right? Or to find good quarterbacks. Like Caserio has seen it. For 20 years he was around Bill. I mean, the best player was pick 199, but then all their other quarterbacks that had some success were later picks, including Jimmy.
Bill drafting Mac Jones was another part of the equation, right? If you go back a year, that created this situation. And so what it leads to then is what you've been saying, the possibility he's going to be on the team for a while. And the question then is he on the team for a while because maybe he just remains their starter, or is he on the team for a while because eventually somebody gets hurt? Maybe not, right? And then somebody is more inclined to trade for Jimmy in 3-4 months. But there's no guarantee that anybody gets hurt or that anybody needs a quarterback, at the beginning of August.
My question in that scenario, you play the game, you hope for, it's weird. You're like hoping for a Teddy Bridgewater situation, right? Someone to get seriously injured, which I think you and I went over. It's happened only a couple times in the last decade. Like it's not a consistent occurrence. And we also figured out that what else has changed? No one hits in training camp anymore. And here's the main key. Like some of the guys that have got injured over the years, Trent Green, Michael Vick, those happen in preseason games. Do you know who doesn't really play in preseason games anymore? Starting quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So the likelihood that something weird would happen in that game is just diminished dramatically because those guys don't play. To me, if you are doing that scenario, which I definitely think is on the table, are if Jimmy's able to throw day one you just have it an open competition? Does Jimmy come back just like last year? Does it depend how Trey looks? Like that's
I think that
slippery slope.
I think first thing is it depends how Trey looks. That's the first thing.
You just get OTAs to judge him and then go from there.
Yeah, I mean, you probably come in with a little bit of a preconceived notion, even though OTAs based on what last year looked like.
Go Trey, come on, buddy.
Him and Nate Sudfeld. Yeah, I mean, if he's just around until he's gone, then anything's on the table because they traded 3 ones for Trey Lance last year, and Trey Lance was not their quarterback. Yeah, and they went to the NFC Championship game with Jimmy Garoppolo.
A little bit, you would say most spots that would do something like that, Trey Lance would have started at least a lot more games. The Niners were in a unique spot trying to make the playoffs. Like think about all the other rookie quarterbacks, all on shitty teams, except Mac, who he just named the starter, week 1 or whatever.
Here's the heart of the issue. The bottom line question is, would they rather cut Jimmy Garoppolo or keep him on their roster? Week 1. Well, maybe not week 1 because then his contract becomes guaranteed. But they can wait up until.
When you say cutting him, do you mean cutting him at the end of training camp or cutting him like around draft time?
I mean, up until the day that his contract becomes guaranteed for the season. Would they rather cut him?
You would agree if like in a couple weeks, just some random, because this is what it feels. Like Jimmy Garoppolo's been cut. You would agree like that's kind of stupid. Like what? That was a failure then, because then you legitimately wasted space. If you could have added some people, even if it wasn't the big guys. Like, what was the point of all this? That would have been really dumb.
Well, it makes more sense to keep him up until the last preseason game than it does to cut him in 2 weeks, unless you're gonna use the money.
Now it makes no sense to cut him.
But to me, like if you're gonna cut him in 3 weeks and you're not gonna use the money, then you might as well keep him up until the last day of the preseason because then it's like, well, I'm not gonna cut him for no reason, not use the money, and then have Trey Lance get hurt in the first preseason game.
Well, here's the other thing, Guy. If you're keeping him through, going into camp, for the most part, right? I mean, quarterbacks that have a legitimate chance to start were added basically at the end of the day, right? I saw some list of quarterbacks. They don't impact. Like Geno Smith doesn't impact Jimmy, some of the random guys. But today, it impacted Jimmy. Well, they're going to be, listen, it might be a shitty quarterback class, but there are still going to be 3 or 4 guys that get drafted, wouldn't you say, in the top 70 picks?
Right? Well, it feels like the Falcons might do it, right? The Falcons might take somebody high. right?
Yeah,
So there's one.
The Panthers easily could.
Panthers could easily do it. There's two. The thing about teams with bridge quarterbacks, the Steelers could definitely do it.
Yep.
Right.
So let's just say like that group of teams within the first 2 days of the
Seattle
draft
could do it potentially.
Sam Howell, Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis off the board, and they're on these type teams. It's like, well, they're not; those aren't options anymore.
The Vikings could do. I mean, although the Vikings did take Kellen Mond, but who knows? Detroit. Did you mention Detroit?
Zimmer hated them. I didn't mention Detroit. They easily could too.
Yeah. No, it's. But again, I go back to the original question: are they of the mind that they're going to start, that Trey Lance is their starting quarterback no matter what, which means they'd be willing to cut Jimmy Garoppolo, in early August, hold him that long, wait and see if anybody gets hurt? Or
you're right. I don't think you would cut Jimmy until the end date. The problem then is he playing in preseason games. You risk him getting hurt.
No, he's not. He's not.
Just Trey and
no
Soto,
chance.
And then who some undrafted free agent running around.
You agree, right? Like if he's going to be around in a month, then there's no point in cutting him then, unless you're using that money. But there's no point because you're not getting anything. You might as well keep him around as an insurance policy for all the trouble in case something happens to Trey.
I would say by this point.
So your scenario from like last week of like he could be around a while. We're closer to that than we are to a trade right now.
I'm fully expecting him to be on the team now heading into training camp. And I think the number one question is going to be, what the hell are you going to do? Because luckily they don't have to worry about it because he's injured. OTAs is easy. He's either rehabbing on his own, rehabbing there. It doesn't matter. He can't practice, right? Trey can get all the reps. OTAs is, I honestly think because he's injured, it makes this situation possible. I think it would get, I think you would borderline have to cut him if he was healthy. Because I think that would create, like, what are you fucking doing?
Well, it would be weird. But again, John, think about the flip side. Is like you're sitting there making that decision. You're going, Trey Lance got hurt last year. The game during his first start.
Can you really think about that? Eventually, you just got to go with the guy. Like if
I'm
Matt
not saying
Stafford gets hurt, the Rams are screwed.
Of course, I'm saying if you've made it that far, at least let's get through the camp and make sure Trey. Because the last thing I want is to cut Jimmy and then try and re-sign him in 3 weeks if Trey Lance got hurt. I'm just saying, if they hold that long, I expect them to keep holding. That's the best way to say it.
It does feel a little unprecedented what they're doing, doesn't it? Usually people that get really aggressive for young quarterbacks pivot pretty quick to that kid.
Yeah.
I don't even think it's arguable. I mean,
he's got to be ready, right? Is the way they look at it.
And my pushback always is, what the fuck does that even mean? Like,
well, no, I agree with you. I'm just saying they drafted him last year and he wasn't more ready than Jimmy Garoppolo.
Well, he was a major project. So was, but you got to sometimes eventually.
I could see though, to me, if they wait through OTAs, he's still on the team, then they're going to cut him right before camp starts.
No. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think if I was a betting man right now, I would bet on training camp opening unless something catastrophic happens during OTAs, which how does anyone going to know? The likelihood of that happening is not high. He's going to be on the team.
You can't keep him for $27 million. That's idiotic. No one's saying he's on the team week one. That's a different story.
No, yeah.
Well,
you can't keep him $27 million. You can't keep him $27 million if he's starting quarterback.
Not as the backup. Yeah.
Which, if he makes it to training camp, starting quarterback is on the fucking table, right?
Yeah. Because, again, that goes back to what does Kyle think of Trey Lance's readiness? That's what it becomes. And that's where I go back. Is their mindset, Trey Lance is our starting quarterback no matter what? If they traded Jimmy Garoppolo, then it'd be easy to say, yes, they are of that mindset. But until they trade him, we don't know exactly what mindset they are of.